Okay. Welcome back to My Divine Light with Patty and Lance Lamans. Today, Lance is going to talk about power.
Well, afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with you. And today we're going to talk about power, or what is actually described in mysticism as non-power.
Now, you have a question
Okay, we have a
from
question.
people that have heard you talk about this before.
Okay,
And they wanted to know, what is the difference between dominion and sovereignty?
the difference between dominion and sovereignty.
With the idea and concept being that dominion is in some way power.
Okay, well, our dominion is now we've talked in other videos about the mind, and when whatever we put into the mind, that projects, and then we sense it with our five sense mind, and that's the experience we have. So whatever we allow to fill our mind becomes our experience, and that is our dominion. That is how we have dominion. Now, there's more to that story, but just to put it basically, that's where our dominion is. Now, our sovereignty is the world we experience. That is our life. That is what we project. We could say create, but they're really mental images, and I'll explain more about that later. They're mental images, and so we have that experience, and that's what the mind's for, is to experience. It's really to experience God, but for now we understand that whatever we put into the mind, that's what we end up experiencing, and that becomes our sovereignty. In other words, no one can come into your world unless they're on the same frequency that you're on. And your frequency is set by what you believe life is, and that's what you're allowing to come into your mind, and that's what you're projecting, that's what you're experiencing. And that is your sovereignty. Now, nobody that's out of that frequency is going to be able to come in to your world. Uh, And so they have no power. No one has power in your world. What you decide your world is what you experience. So no one else has power over that. Now, you can give them power. You can say, people have the power to hurt me, and then they'll have the power to hurt you. And it's not about what you say, it's about what the ideas that you allow into your mind. But if you allow that idea that other people can hurt you somehow, that if they can attack you or emotionally attack you or whatever it is, then that's going to be active in your world. And anybody else that's on that frequency is going to be able to come into your world. And if your world is where you're allowing other people to have power, then they're going to have power over you. But that's not because they really have power over you. That's because you allowed them to have power over you through what you allowed to come into your own mind.
So if you have dominion over yourself and you are God, you understand your God self,
Mm-hmm.
do you have power over God?
No.
I think
Okay.
so.
Our dominion
Dumb question.
is in the mind. and the mind images, we have dominion over our experience. God gave us dominion over the earth and the things of the earth. He didn't give us dominion over God. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later as we progress
But
here.
he gave you dominion over the earth.
He gave us dominion over the earth in our own experience. In other words, we don't control other people, and other people don't control us unless we're in agreement on that. And then we interact according to however we've allowed it to manifest in our mind, which then becomes the outward manifestation, and we experience
So you would neither have sovereignty over God either. Is there a difference between the two?
it. Yes. I mean, God is his own sovereignty. There is no other sovereignty in reality. Now, we have sovereignty in our own little world that we create, if you want to call it a creation. We create our own experience.
But in the world of countries, some countries have sovereignty over other countries.
No, well, unless they invade them, they don't. Every country has their own sovereignty, and that's the same with our world. But nobody can invade your world unless you allow it. That's a little bit hard.
I don't know how we got into invasions.
Yeah.
Let's get back to power.
Okay. Yeah. We'll explain all this, but that's the basics of it. That's the only power we have, the only dominion we have is over the mind. And the mind is form. So that's how we have dominion over form. And that's what God meant when he said, you have dominion over the earth. Now, to start with, I just like to remind everyone that we're all souls and we're all moving towards enlightenment. And we, in the eyes of God, we're all the same. There's no difference between a master and a non-master in God's eyes. Saint or sinner makes no difference. God is God, and he brings his blessings to all. Whether we accept that or not, that's up to us. If we don't accept it, we won't experience it. So, but there's no one's greater than the other. That's the point. Everyone is the same through God's eyes. We might all be looking at the fire of God's life individually through a different perspective, but that doesn't mean that we're any different through God's eyes. We all have the same capacities and the same qualities. We may not be expressing all those qualities and capacities, but nonetheless, they are available to us and they are in us. And we have been given those from the beginning. So it's like in the morning when the sun rises, if we went by appearances, we would think the sun is rising over the horizon, rising up on the horizon. That's what we would think if we only went by what we see. But in reality, the sun's not rising. The earth is rotating towards the sun. And that rotation towards the sun is what makes it appear as if the sun was rising. And so in reality, it's just the earth moving, rotating towards the sun that makes the sun appear as if it was rising. The sun has always been there. All night long, the sun was in its place. The sun is never out of its place, and it's never um, not being the sun. It's never not shining, even though we don't see it. It we know it's still there, and it's still in its place, and it's still doing everything that it is meant to do. Um, and so it's the same way with God. God is shining his light on all of us, but we don't see it. We're in the darkness of mortality, and we don't see it. But as we rotate towards God, then it, it seems as if God is filling us. It seems as if God is rising in us. It's not really rising in us. We are rotating towards God, and then we see the light. We see God's light. So it's the same type of thing. God is always there. God is always providing us everything that he is, for we are those rays of light that comes off of his sun, and that is shining. That shining is us in reality. That's our true self. It is a ray of light of God, and uh, that shines through our soul. And it never varies, it never changes, it never wavers. It always has the same capacities and the same qualities with embedded in it in every person and everything and every condition everywhere. At every point of creation, all of God is at every point of creation. And so we have this God, we have this God that is himself always. And he never gives one to one that he doesn't give to another. And so you begin to see how ridiculous it is to ask God to heal someone. Because why would he heal one person and not heal the other? That's ridiculous. Of course he would. And he is giving all of himself to every one of us. And so even though God hears our prayers, it's he smiles on us when he sees us asking us to do something for us. You know, uh, he gave us a mind, and whatever we put or allow into that mind is what we experience. So to ask God to do something about it is completely ridiculous. And so now we start getting a better vision of what prayer is. Prayer is not asking God to do anything, because God's already doing all that he would ever do, all that he's always done. He he has given it to us. And all we have to do is begin to rotate towards him. And as we rotate towards him, then we see the light. We get the benefit of the light. Just like in the morning, as the earth rotates towards the sun, then it gets the benefit of daylight. And it's the same with us, with God. And so there's nothing to ask God for. Now, God is the only power there is. There is no other power. everything is in God and everything is shining out from God. And his universe or his creation is infinite. No beginning, no end. And it is always within God. All of his infinite universe is within God. And he is shining that out to us. And that means that everything that is within God is available to us. Now, he gave us a mind so that we, as souls, and the soul is the individual, the ray of light is the individual expression of God, but that shines through as a soul. And the soul is the place of manifestation. And then, so God gave us this mind, and whatever part of God we want to experience out of God's infinite universe, we can put that in the mind, and then we'll have that particular experience. And there is no bad in it. There's no error in it. There's no wrongness. There's no evil. There's no misfunctioning. There's no interference. None of that is true about God. God is shining through, and everything that is in God is perfect. There is no imperfection in any of God's infinite creation. And then we have the mind, so we can allow whatever part of that infinite creation we want to experience, we just allow it to go into the mind, and then the mind will project it, and then we'll have that experience. Now, the soul has been sleeping, and so there's this other part that we call world mind or world thought, and that is basically collective thought in the world that believes the world is a material universe, that it has fixed laws that are material laws, and if we don't obey those laws, we suffer for it. And that's true as long as we're in agreement with that. So ever since the world began, all these thoughts, should I say, ever since the earth began, all these thoughts have been coming together, collecting, and they're all in human consciousness. And that human consciousness then has all these ideas about what the world is, about what life is. And when we as souls come into outer expression, then the world tries to convince us that is the truth about life, because the world doesn't know any better. The world just thinks that this is the way it is, and whatever it sees with the five sense mind, it takes it as a verification of reality, and then that perpetuates the same idea, and that's how it moves through time. Now, so we don't have to accept those things, but because the soul was asleep, it was just basically sitting there and watching life go by and thinking, this is what life is, and This is, I'm just having the experience and that's it, and I'm going to do the best I can, and maybe, maybe I'll get some good out of it. But the soul didn't realize that it was allowing that to come into its individual mind, and then that was projecting, and then that was what the soul was perceiving with the five sense mind, and that became the experience of that soul. And so that's our dominion, is once we awake to that, we can stop agreeing with the world, what the world is telling us, that bodies get sick and die, that bodies end up in the grave, all these things that, everything is temporary, you know. Well, everything is temporary in the mind. Uh, that is, that it's constantly changing, because it's God has the idea of his creation within himself, and that is projecting into our mind. Now we're covering that up with all these world thoughts, and so we're kind of getting a mixture of God's creation, and then over the top of that, we have what we think the world is. And so uh, that's why the sky is still beautiful, the sunset's still beautiful, the ocean's beautiful, the trees are beautiful, all that stuff. And then you have this human idea mixed in with that says things die, and, in reality, everything gets updated every minute of every day. And we see that as change. The soul sees it as change, and he thinks, oh, time is passing because it's changed. And it wasn't like that yesterday, so it's different today. So that must mean that there's a passing of time. Now, there is no passing of time, because God, the flow of life is coming from within us and moving out, and it is, anyway, it's moving out and it's updating our creation every minute of every day according to its perfection. And so that's the truth. Now we take and put on that what all these ideas from the mind. So that's that part of it. Now, the other part of it, and so God has nothing to do with all this top layer. That those are just making images, and it's basically just a misuse of the mind. That's all it is. So God is not concerned about it. It doesn't affect your eternal life. It doesn't affect your life at all, except for, you experience what you put in the mind, what you allow in the mind, you experience. And so, but God has nothing to do with that. See, he gave that to us so that we could experience him, but instead, because we're sleeping or asleep at the wheel, and we're just allowing the mind to determine what life is, what we're going to experience, and then that's what we experience. So we're experiencing the world instead of having a God experience. Now, what's really out there is one substance. There's everywhere you look with your five sense mind, you see all these different things, but there's only one thing, and that's the substance of God. And that substance is luminous. it is what gives color to everything. It is what gives life to everything. And even in the darkness, we see with our eyes because of that luminous substance. And that substance is down below all the atoms, all the quantum particles. It is the primordial soup behind all that, and it is a luminous substance. And it is the only real substance. Now, the mind then constructs on top of that, and that's where you get the quantum particles and the atoms and the molecules and the cells and the bodies, et cetera, et cetera. But that substance is all that's really there. And so when we put something in the mind, it more or less projects and builds that idea off of that substance. And then that's why we have that experience. Now, Jesus said, the eye is the light of the body. And that's what he meant. We are seeing the luminous substance of God, and that is because we're seeing it, that becomes our body because we're using what we see to verify what life is, or so we think that that's the verification of life. It's really only mind substance that is built on top of God's substance. But it's not fixed. It's not anything that is there permanently. It's only there because we projected it, because of what we allowed in our minds. And so you can begin to see that God is just God being God, and all his ideas of creation are built into his life that is moving through us and is the substance of the universe, the universes, should I say. And so there's nothing for God to have power over. There's nothing for God to control. On the seventh day, God rested. It's done. Everything's good. It's all good. It is done. And we are just getting the opportunity to experience whatever part of that creation we want to experience. Now, that's not a real power. We have the power to do that. And whatever we put in there, whatever vibration that's at, whatever frequency that vibrates at, only that matching frequency will be able to come into your world experience. So we are the only power of our experience, but it's not a power over something. It's just what we put in the mind is what we experience. That's simple, and we're not controlling anything. All we're doing is either accepting God and letting that go into the world, or we are accepting what the world is claiming to be true and letting that go into the mind and then into our world and operate. And so we call that the mind God, because when you accept the ideas of the world, then that mind acts as if it's a God. It acts as if those laws are fixed and there's nothing you can do about it. Gravity, if you throw an apple up in the air, it comes back down. but that's not a real law. That is just what the world says is a law. And it's there to help us out, actually, because if we didn't have gravity, we'd all be floating around up in the air. So it allows us to, keep our feet on the ground and communicate with others and have good times. So it has its purpose, but it's not a law. We're not under that law. We're only under the law if we say we're under it. And we're really only under God's laws. And so the idea that there's something in the world that can do harm to you or that can do good to you. We say if we go up in the mountains, we're going to feel good. It's going to make us feel good. And if we go up in the mountains, we're going to feel good because we believe that that condition out there is having an effect on us. What we don't realize is that's only a belief, and that we can bring that joy out from within us and experience that joy regardless if we go up into the mountain or not. We are the ones that decide, and that's our dominion, that's our power, but it's not a power over anything else. It's only the power of what we decide we're going to experience. And no one else can interfere with that. So there's no powers operating against us. What we tell our bodies to do is what the body does. The body isn't anything of itself except for a bunch of cells that have come together, that are made of mind stuff to begin with. And if we tell the body it should be perfect, then the body will be perfect. But it's not just about thinking it or saying it. You have to believe it. You have to know it with your heart that it's really true, that what you're telling the world to be, it will be. There is an intelligence and an activity that goes with us wherever we go. And it operates our life in our world according to what we tell it. It is, it is our Holy Spirit, is what it is, and that's operating with us. And it's not a power over anything. The other part of it is this: we can't change what we've already created. We've put into the mind certain ideas, we've allowed them unconsciously, normally. We put these or allow these things into the mind, and then they start taking manifestation. So here we are, and we're experiencing this manifestation. And this inner God is allowing all this to happen because that's where we told it to go. And so it's not overcoming anything. There's no interference. As soon as you start putting something else in the mind, if you start putting God stuff in the mind, then that's going to transform your experience. Now, so we have to go through this transition, of course, to get out of this binding mortality that has got our mind so wrapped up in this idea that there's powers out in the world and that there's more than one thing. See, there isn't more than one thing. God is everything. God is the intelligence and the activity and the love of everything we experience. And when we start to recognize that, then we start to become awake in our experience, and then that starts to put new things into the mind. And when God comes into the mind, it comes with a fire. And that fire, Jesus called it a two-edged sword. And what it does is it burns away all the human ideas, but it also lifts up the consciousness and the world experience into a more perfect world experience to the degree that we allow it in our own consciousness. And so we're not working against anything. There's nothing working against us. There is no power. There is only what we decide or what we allow to come into our minds. And if we allow God to come into our minds, then that's how we begin to rotate towards God. And it will seem as if all of a sudden God is filling us up. In reality, we're just coming to God. And God has always been there, always had given us everything we ever needed to live the most perfect life ever. Okay, Patty's
Yeah. This is how
got
you say
something?
it. This is how you say it very lovely in the Soul Steps chapter. We
Okay,
are infinite, eternal being. And then we have always existed, never born, never dying. Our true self is changeless, remaining the same always. We were created by God while being ourselves creators. Here is pretty much a
okay. That was
synopsis.
beautiful.
Synopsis.
Okay.
Yeah, you write
Do
beautifully.
you want me to read this part?
Yeah, I think you might. It's a
Okay.
perfect summation.
Okay, this is out of the chapter in the book, You Are Divinely Made, and it's called Soul Steps. And it says, Dearest infinite, all encompassing Father, we have the greatest gratitude for you have made the Son of God infinite, reaching into all corners of life. We know thou, great Father, are voicing your power through all your expressions to bring the perfect divine idea into the manifest. The divine unfoldment lies before us, while it is perfect in every moment, bringing exactly what is needed to each of your creations, forging our golden beings in the fire of experience. That sums it up very nice. Thank
The
you,
fire.
sweetie.
Yes.
That was lovely.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, so that pretty much sums it up. God is not a power over anything. His power is that he shines his perfection everywhere, in everyone, in every condition, everything, at every point of creation. And he has always been shining it and always will be shining it and is shining it now. We, as souls, get to choose what part of that infinite creation, which is embedded in every single ray of God, because each ray of God is God and has all that is in God in it. And so we get to choose out of that what we want. But in order to do that, and that's our dominion, however, this world mind, which Jesus called Satan, has come in and is laid claim to a different creation, as if there were another creation. And the mind doesn't know any better. The mind just projects what you allow into it. So the mind doesn't have any power. There's no power in the mind. It just projects. That's it. So it's meant for God to shine through the soul down into the mind and then come out as world experience. But because We allowed Satan to come into our mind. And remember Jesus, he said nothing. So that's where we have to get to. We have to get to a point where there's nothing in us that Satan can sit on. And that means we no longer believe in the powers of a material universe. We no longer believe that there's any power. Now we're awakening and realizing there are no powers in anywhere. There is only the presence of God being the presence of God. And that's all it's ever been. Okay. Well, that is pretty much the summation of it.
You were going to say something about no power.
Right. That's what we've been talking about. That it is.
Can you make it in one sentence about no power?
Well, yes, that's what I was just explaining.
I know the whole thing's been about it, but I mean,
God is God, and he's not a power over anything. You could say God is the one power, and that's true.
That's good.
God is the one power because he created his infinite universe or universes, and they're infinite. That means never beginning and never ending. God is infinite and eternal, never beginning, never ending. And that you could say is one power, but it's not a power over anything because there is nothing else. There is only God appearing as God's creation. There's only God being God. And God is not separate from his creation. And we are God's creation. So there's no separation there. There is only the delusion that we're living some other life. But that's not a power over us. We've just allowed it to act as a power. But it's not a real power. And as soon as we start going within and getting to know our inner God and allowing that to come down into the mind, then all that world ideas of there being powers out in the world that could harm you or powers out in the world that can make you good, like money. They say, oh, if I only had this much money, I would be good. Well, maybe that's true for a while, but it's temporary. And God is an ever flow of his infinite universe, ever replenishing river of life. And that is constantly lifting us up. And it's happening regardless of what we think about the mind. And even though we're experiencing the mind stuff, as soon as we realize what we are and start cohabitating with our inner God, then all those things go away. So they're not a real power. And like we talked about, there's no powers in the world that can come into your world because unless they're on the same frequency that you decided when you allowed certain things in your mind. Does that answer the question?
That more than answers the question.
Okay.
But would you like to do a practice instead of a poem? This is the perfect practice.
Okay, sure. We can give you guys something to practice on. And this book, it starts with expanding your awareness. There's practices in here where you learn to expand who you are. And if you follow those, you can develop an expanded consciousness. And why is that important? It's because God is a light shining through the soul. And the more your consciousness is expanded, the more light that comes through. It's not that there's less light there or more light there. No, it's you open your consciousness and more light pours through. And then you see more what they call miracles out in the world. Okay, so
I love one of the things you said in your book about miracles are common.
miracles should be common. I mean,
And they are.
it's really um, our mortality is what's miraculous. In other words, it's a miracle that we die. It's ridiculous. It's a miracle that it even happens
No, Joel
because
says you don't die.
and we don't die because and that's why it's a miracle that we experience death because God never created it. And so we're meant to be alive forever. We don't have to go through death process. That is just what we've been telling the body to do, and that's what the body does. We did that unknowingly, we did it unconsciously, uh, but nonetheless, it takes effect because it doesn't matter if you do it unconsciously or not. Doesn't matter if you knew what you were doing or not. It the mind projects what you allow into it. So anyway, these practices are meant to open up that window of the soul to allow more light of God to come through so that that can come into your mind.
Shining forth, not a little,
Not a little, we want a lot.
but
That's
majestically.
right. Yeah. So miracles, there's nothing miraculous about a miracle. That's what Patty was
That's what
trying
you're
to say. Yeah, that there's nothing miraculous about that. That should be normal. And then it's abnormal that we don't have those miracles in our life, that we go through pain and suffering.
Exactly.
That's abnormal, So anyway,
Okay.
here is practice for emerging in the new you. Every day during your duties, stop for a minute to realize there is a new you emerging. That's that new you rotating into the light, rotating towards God, coming into existence. See, all throughout this lifetime, a new you was coming into being every year. Every year,
Every minute,
and every minute,
second,
we are something new. We are actually new every minute of every day.
every minute.
You were not just changing, but becoming a new person daily. Realize this is something which has been happening lifetime after lifetime. For thousands of years, your soul has brought new experiences for you to develop in you new ideas of life. Now, after all this time, you have seen the outer picture does not hold the answers you have been seeking. Having turned within to seek a new insight, bringing the solutions you so desperately search for on the outside of yourself. In this searching within you, you have now discovered there is a new you present, which you were never previously aware of. This new you is much different than all the others you have emerged from experience. This new you is coming from deep within, bringing with it all the qualities and capacities of the Christ self. In fact, it is the very Christ self with its name, I am. See this coming, then anticipate it. This is not just fancy words. This new you has been awaiting your recognition all along. Now, with your approval, it will be able to come into this very life, drowning out the old man who depended on the world. This new you is coming while your anticipation of it brings a joy no man can put asunder. This new you is emerging, melding into your whole being. Feel it coming. Feel it. Feel it come roaring into your life. The new you is your original self, yet it is brand new to your old life. Okay. And with that said, I think we'll wrap it up for today.
Okay.
And
But you must always approve it. You can't, you have to approve your new you. You have to accept it.
You have to accept it. You have to agree with it.
That's the only requirement.
And the only way you can
That's
do
the
that
only thing.
is to go within and have an experience with it. Develop a relationship with it. Get to know it. Invite it into your life. Awake to the fact that it is your eternal companion.
Ever new, ever renewed.
And it is ever new, ever renewing your life. Eternal. Okay. God bless. All right.
Okay.
Lovely to be with you.
See you next time.
Okay.
Love you.